I come from Gibsons. It's a small town on the west coast of British Columbia in Canada. My father was the local school counsellor. It's a little bit like being the village priest. My mother ran a small hobby farm. It was one of those towns. Nobody locked their doors. As we walked to school, there'd be waves and people tooting at us. Weekends were for fun. We made cubbies in the forest. We dug these huge ponds that we hoped would ice over enough in winter that we could ice skate on them. It never worked. I sold raspberries out the front of my house for pocket money. When my father died, 20 years after leaving that town, the local paper wrote a story about his passing. It was that sort of place. When I was 14, we left Gibsons. I came to Australia. I missed my friends. I became a teacher. I moved around a lot, transferred city, country, city. I longed for that connection. But my reality was a little bit different. Here am I, 20 years working for the Department of Education and Training, 15 as a school administrator. I was tired. I'd worked in tough schools with tough people. I was ill. I was clinically depressed and I was anxious. Here's my beloved Tim, sculptor, multi-dabbler and home renovation addict. 6 houses later and 10 years as a stonemason, shoulders, elbows, wrists, knees, all shot. I was broken in spirit and he was broken in body. But like all good Fremantle hippies, we were pretty environmentally aware. We recycled, we rode our bikes, we signed petitions and we went to rallies. One night, we went to a talk. Peak oil and permaculture. It was one of those good news, bad news things. First, Richard Heinberg introduced us to the concept of peak oil. If you imagine a normal curve, what we discovered was world oil production was sitting right at the top and could only go down. The implications of that were scary. Some people left in the break. They were so confronted. But then David Holgram spoke. He shared his dream, retrofitting the suburbs for a post-oil future. He talked about these series of 4 houses that decided that they would take out the fences between them. One was the community garden, one was an orchard, one was the play area for the kids and the parents, and one had the goats and the rabbits and chooks. I was intrigued. I was interested. It wasn't Gibson's. It wasn't my intentional community. But I might be able to do it right where I was. I wasn't just interested. I became obsessed with the idea. I quit work to get on with it. Now, some of the things we did were those typical sustainability stuff. We put in solar panels, rainwater tanks, we sold our car, we started growing more veggies. And then we did this course called Living Smart. And it's a course about behaviour change to teach households what they can do in their own homes to become more sustainable. And it had the concept of community as part of sustainability. We were interested, we became facilitators, and the first course we ran was within our little street. Now, rather than knocking on everyone's door and saying, "Hi, the world's going to end, would you like to all get together and do something about it?" we had a street party. We invited everyone to come and make a mosaic fish to decorate this ugly old tank at the end of our street. While people were playing making things and talking to each other. I went round with my clipboard. School principal. Hi, we're all doing this course together. What night would you come? 20 people enrolled out of a street of about 60, a third of us. At the end of the course, I posed a question. What would we like Hulbert Street to be like? People talked about garage sales, weekly afternoon teas. They talked about Verge gardening days. The kids talk about cricket games and soccer matches on the middle of the street. Then Obi put his hand up. I'd like to see a skateboard ramp in High Street. Permission, occupational health and safety, working with the local council. Oh, that's a good idea. I said, let's add it to the list. And you know, the funny thing is, that's the first thing that happened. We had TK living in our street. He's Fremantle's skateboarding guru and a street artist. One of the mums gave him $20. He found the rest of the materials, and before long... I didn't think that bit was funny. Before long, we had a skateboard ramp in our street. This is version 2. Now, that ramp did a really interesting thing to the street because it changed it from somewhere that cars drove down to somewhere that you played. Kids, parents, all out there together doing what they love best, connecting. And we started to do things together. We had 3 or 4 Verge gardening days. People who had an established Verge got out and helped somebody that didn't. At the end of the second gardening day, Eli came to me. He's this super sensitive teenager who lives at number 15. You know, Shani, he said, when we grow up, I reckon we're going to feel really privileged to live in this street. I had a flashback to my own childhood in Gibson's. Sean started the weekly afternoon tea. We came along, we brought something to eat, you brought a cuppa from your own house, and we chatted. During one of those afternoons, we talked about Anna. Anna's 84 and she lives alone at the end of our street. What if something happened to her in the middle of the night? We could give her the contact numbers for the people on each side, but instead of doing that, we did this. This is the Hulbert Street Contact Book, Skills and Resources Register. As well as everyone's phone numbers and email addresses, it has the list of skills and resources of things people have and things that they're willing to give, as well as what people need. No one buys a fridge trolley in Hulbert Street. Adam and Brian have the fridge trolley. Kate has a colour printer. Obi will babysit your cat. And Pam will do your typing. So, you know, when you get 3 ladies who write down that they'd like to learn more about singing and an ex-choir mistress, of course, you end up with a street choir. We sang songs. We sang plenty of songs. Some of them were in tune. Tim and I ran out of room to grow food, so we established this. It's called the Hulbert Street Guerrilla Garden. It's on a pathway down to the beach. And what I'm most pleased with about this garden is not the food that it produced for us, but what it enabled us to do with the excess. We could distribute it to the rest of our street. It wasn't uncommon for people to come home and there'd be a pile of potatoes and a carrot sitting on their doorstep. People walking past this garden nearly universally had 3 reactions. This is how they went. Number 1, that's terrific. God, I'm so glad you're doing this. I really think it's fantastic. Number 2, don't the vandals get all the food? And And number 3, did you have to get permission? My responses: thanks, yeah, we think it's fantastic too. Number 2, the vandals. No, the pests get more stuff than the vandals do. And number 3, permission. Do you think I needed to get permission? I'd rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. So based on that philosophy, we started the Holbert Street movies. Once... I actually didn't think that was funny either. But we started the Holbert Street movies, okay? So once a month we'd get together, we'd watch some sort of sustainability-based movie. You bring your own cushions, chairs, and a shared potluck dinner. This is freer, okay? Soon the street became more about people, connection, and community than it did about cars. Tim the handyman was responsible for these 3. So we have the Holbert Street Cafe. That's where you come on a Friday night with a beer or a cup of tea and you talk to your neighbours. We have the Holbert Street Book Exchange. Bring a book, take one. This, I won't say monstrosity, this beautiful thing is the Holbert Street Bike Shed. And that's where our street cargo bike was stored. Now, the cargo bike's big enough you can take children in it, you can use it for your shopping, and TK used to use it to collect beer. We all had our favourite things. I remember one day, Finn, who lived across the road, he came to me and he said, "Shani, I couldn't concentrate in school today. I was so excited about what might have happened in our street while I was at school." I'm not too sure if that was the day he came home to this, but this is actually Tim's favourite. It's our street pizza oven on wheels. Nothing brings people together like fire and food. Now, this pizza oven, it's not owned by anyone. It's actually owned by everyone. Our weekly afternoon teas became weekly pizza dinners. And this is my favourite. Our goats. And I don't know how many times I've looked at this picture, but I've just noticed, see, so it's TK there, see his white dog? Look at the look on that dog's face. We taught Sunday to jump from back to back. If you ever get goats, don't do that, because it's not very fun when they're really big. Anyway, so we decided we'd get goats. But we live on a 200 square metre block. You don't house goats there. So we asked everyone in the street, who would like to babysit our goats? 3 people said they would. The most logical one was next door. Then it happened. We pulled down the fence, retrofitting our street, if not the whole suburb, for a post-oil future. I want to tell you about 2 incidences that happened in our street and how our little community responded. So about 11 o'clock one night, we heard a window being smashed. 13 people ran out into the road, most of us in pyjamas. We managed to actually get onto the road before the window smashers had actually got there, and we surrounded them in a bit of a circle. Now, what interests me is the different responses from different people. So one guy got on the phone to the cops, another guy got the contact book and rang TK. Somebody came with a camera flashing really aggressively. At which point, one of the window smashers took off, but the other one stayed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't realise this was that sort of community." Here comes the school principal. "That sort of community? This can be your community. We are all community. Do you feel bad about what you've done? Do you feel guilty? You should confess to someone. It'll make you feel better." shall I ring the cops and you can talk to them? Eventually, TK rang and said, please, actually don't ring the cops, it'll make my life a lot easier. And we headed back to our place for a cup of tea and a debrief. The second story is more personal. I'd had my handbag stolen, and a couple of weeks later, they walked out with the 250-kilo safe. That safe contained our entire identities, a wad of cash, the usual cameras and jewelries, and most distressing for me, my laptop and my hard drive backup disk. 10 years of community work, living smart courses, photos, volunteer committee work, gone. We'd given a lot to Hulbert Street, but by God, we got it back in the days and the weeks following that burglary. Life's disappointments are harder to bear when you don't know any swear words. That was given to me by a little boy, along with the first stamper he'd ever made and his entire shell collection. People brought afternoon tea, but they also brought meals. They brought rescue remedy. They brought food vouchers. Kate started a Dropbox to try and replace my files. Kathy brought $500 with a note. I'm doing this because I can. Please don't give it back. About the fourth visit from the police, this is the advantage of having a significant burglary. They come like more than once. One of the coppers said to me, "Are you insured?" "Yes," I replied, "I'm insured. I'm insured by my community." Community. Do you remember that first garage sale we talked about? Well, we had one in 2008, and then again for a few years until last year, 7,500 people came to the Hulbert Street Sustainability Fiesta. The Fiesta's not just about stalls and food, music and entertainment. It's actually about inspiring, educating and celebrating sustainable living. What I love about it, though, is every household was involved. When you open a street with 2 open homes, 5 open art studios and 5 open gardens, it's about community. The community at the Fiesta extended out of our street into the wider community. People organised all sorts of different projects. This is actually a bike valet parking program. So what you do is you come with your bike and you go down the red carpet, and then somebody takes it and parks it, and there's this whole crowd of people that clap and cheer. But you know, in the end, the whole thing was just bloody good fun. When I tell the story of Hulbert Street, people generally respond in a really similar way. The first thing they say is something like, "Are there any houses for sale in your street?" Then they say, "You know, I'd really love to do that in my street, but I don't live in Freo. My street's too long, there's too many cars, and there's this really strange family that live at number 14. I have no answer. But I do know 3 things. Everybody craves connection. Everybody wants community. I know what we did in Hulbert Street. We muddled along. It wasn't rocket science. We had very little money, even less permission. Some of it was hard. Actually, not much of it was hard. And most of it was fun. We created an unintentional community. And lastly, you know what? I reckon you can do it in your street too. Thank you.